It's an uneventful night on the graveyard shift for CSPD Officer Bradley Birch.
Officer Birch is on his regular routine shift that night.
But Birch's peace and quiet is about to be shattered.
Dispatch to 330.
Go for 330.
We have a report of shots fired at a residence on Bruno Circle.
330, 10-4 en route.
As he approaches the location of the shooting, Officer Birch kills his lights and makes his way toward the house, weapon drawn.
There was nobody outside, and he only saw a light coming from a basement window. He went over toward that area to see if he could see anything inside.
He looks into a window and can see that someone is lying in a pool of blood, and there are at least two people there trying to help this person. He's not really sure what he's looking at.
The officer's going to have to determine, is it safe to go in? Do I knock the door down? Do I wait for help?
Once Birch sees the victim on the ground, his priority now is to get into the home. We don't need to warrant, we don't need to knock.
Help down here!
You, show me your hands! Back up.
At his home on Bluegill Drive, Lt.Joe Kenda tries to make productive use of another sleepless night.
When I was working cases, I had difficulty sleeping. I couldn't turn my mind off.
It's Kenda.
At 1:30 in the morning, no one in your family calls to see how things are. It's the police department.
Okay, what's the house number?
They're telling me the person's been shot in the back of the head. His condition is critical and stable.
All right, I'm on the way.
I have just been awarded something new to agonize about.
Arriving at the house, Kenda begins to soak in his surroundings.
What I do notice in the garage door is up and there's a limousine parked in the garage. I thought that was unusual to see in a private home.
How you doing?
Good.
What do we got?
We got one victim. He's already been transported to the hospital. He was still breathing, though.
The victim is William Henry McCarty. He's 27 years old. He has a gunshot wound in the center of the back of his head.
Billy was an auto detailer in Denver. I don't believe Billy had enemies. He loved to hang out with friends and have a good time. He was active in his own personal life, but family was number one to him.
So the victim lived here?
Yeah, he was living with the homeowner, Sang Vasquez. His girlfriend, Kim Ochoa, and her 3-year-old son. They're the ones that found him.
And where are they?
I'll take you to him.
Hey, I'm Lieutenant Kenda.
Hi.
They are distraught. They are emotional. Kim has awakened her 3-year-old child and is comforting him. Sang is also very upset. This is his friend. He's very concerned about him.
I understand that you and Willie used to work together?
Yeah, we did, but he hasn't been working in a while because he busted his hand at work.
Billy went through a rough patch. He had to have surgery on his left arm, and he never worked again after that. And then Billy and his common-law wife separated. He was, bouncing around place to place.
He's kind of just been in a bad spot. So we figured he could come stay with us because I know he's been good at working at cars. And, I was trying to start my limo service.
According to Sang, he and Willie got along so well that after a couple weeks of living and working under the same roof, the two men decided to go into business together.
Sang said, I'll be the business mind, and Willie will be the one who takes care of the car, kind of a gearhead type guy.
Well, bro, I think we're good for the night then, huh? Always a pleasure, bro. Really appreciate you helping out.
So what happened tonight?
Well, yeah, we were working on the limo.
Sang decided it was time to go to bed, and Willie said in that case he was going to go out for bed and he'd be back.
I mean, we were in and out of sleep. and just heard the bang downstairs.
What was that?
I don't know.
Then there was silence. So he got up and went downstairs to investigate.
Wait, I'm coming with you.
Oh my God, Willie. Oh my God. Oh my God. Get up, dude.
And they find Willie at the bottom of the stairs. They see blood on his head. They don't know what's happened to him.
Call 911. Willie, come on, dude.
They can't get him to respond to them in any way.
Come on, man. Get up.
Did you happen to see or hear anyone coming or going?
No. Nobody.
Having talked to Sang now at some length, I have no reason to disbelieve anything he's told me. His emotional state of mind is what one would expect to discover when a friend has been seriously hurt.
Sang's girlfriend Kim reiterates his version of events.
He's a genuinely good person.
Yeah. Do you think he's gonna be okay?
It's hard to tell, but we hope so.
So now the next step, of course, is to move on to what the physical evidence tells us.
Did you see or hear anything unusual when you got here?
No, not really. Body lying on the floor here. Homeowners knelt down over the top of him.
This is a tri-level home. He is found at the base of the small staircase leading to the lowest level of the house.
Sang Vasquez said he thought he might have fallen down the stairs.
I'm not too sure about that.
There is no visible blood anywhere on the staircase, giving it short length unless he managed to rise 3 feet in the air and turn over vertically and land headfirst. He did not fall down the stairs.
What's with the cup?
Shell casing.
It's very important for the initial officers on scene to do everything they can to protect the crime scene. In this particular instance, there was a shell casing that was found, and in order to keep it from getting destroyed or moved from where it was, they put a cup over it.
Underneath the cup is an expended .380 caliber casing from a semi-automatic pistol.
We've got a gunshot wound to the head, and we've got an empty casing in the same area. So common sense would tell us that that's probably the weapon we're looking for.
But that's not all.
The expended casing indicates that the gun is fired also on that floor area at the base of the stairs. He was shot where he is found, at the base of the stair. That's important to know.
However, the position of the body raises another possibility. An intruder may have followed Willie into the home and instigated a deadly confrontation.
What if he comes in the door with Mr. Irate, whoever that is, and he just wants the guy to leave or go away?
Keep on bothering me, I'm gonna call the cops.
You owe me money.
You're tripping, you need to leave.
Maybe the shot is fired, the perpetrator runs out the front door before Sang comes down the steps. Could that work? Absolutely.
You two want to come with me?
Since neither Sang nor his girlfriend Kim saw the shooter, Kenda decides to cast a wider net.
We know that if there is a perpetrator out there running loose, maybe somebody in this neighborhood did see him.
All right, let's go start knocking on some doors. Remember, it's 3 a.m., so don't expect to be welcome with open arms.
Yes, sir.
Given the hour of night, the odds of finding a witness aren't very good. People are asleep.
Any luck?
Nobody saw anything.
Initially, it doesn't go well. All we've accomplished is annoying most of the neighbors by waking them up.
But just when it seems Kenda and his men have hit a dead end,
Hey, Lieutenant.
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
they make contact with a potential eyewitness.
I'm here with Mary Rodriguez and her daughter Nadine, who said she saw something suspicious. I think you probably need to come talk to her.
10-4, I'll be right there.
Nadine Rodriguez, She's 13 years old. She says that she saw something she thought was suspicious. Suspicious at this point in time is something I'm looking for. So we're investigating this, what seems to be a rather mysterious shooting in this private home where nobody sees, nobody hears, nobody knows. We've now gotten ourselves into the position of having a 13-year-old witness in a neighboring house who saw something she thought was suspicious.
Okay, Nadine, can you tell me what you saw?
Well, I was in my room listening to some music. And I looked out the window and I saw this guy come out of that house and go jump into his car and drive away really, really fast. And I just thought that was really suspicious.
Now, who is he? Is he our killer, fleeing the scene of what he's just done? He certainly could be.
Can you tell me what the guy looked like?
He was a white guy, maybe in his 20s. Oh, and he had long blonde hair.
How about the car he drove off in? Can you tell me about that?
It was a black truck, a pickup truck with a red stripe on it.
Now, that is awfully good. How many black pickup trucks with a red stripe have a long-haired blonde driver? Probably not that many.
Go ahead and put an APB out to all the units on that pickup truck and a description of the driver.
Yes, sir.
We have to find that person, see if they're involved. Could be the suspect, could be a witness. We don't know, but we have to find out who that person is.
All right, well, thank you, Nadine. You've been very helpful. You might want to think about getting some sleep now.
Yes, sir.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Go for Kenda.
Kenda receives an update on the status of his victim.
10-4. Yeah, you just got a call. They pronounced the victim.
Okay.
You want to go ahead and notify the next of kin?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I sent a detective, calls me, said, well, it's a homicide. They pronounced it. He has a fatal brain injury.
I got a call from an investigator saying that they were at my mother's house and that Billy was shot. I was shocked. I didn't know what to think.
With Willie's death now ruled a homicide, Kenda waits anxiously to see if the APB produces a hit on his suspected killer.
313 to Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
Sir, I'm standing here looking at a black truck with a red stripe.
Perfect. What's your location?
Within a few minutes of putting that APB out, I'm not surprised we get a hit. The officer says it's unoccupied, but it's only a few miles from our crime scene. And we head over to it right away.
The vehicle in question is parked in an otherwise empty lot.
Looks like a pretty good match to me.
It sure does. That's interesting. It's not even warm.
It certainly matches the description. The officer is correct in calling it into us. But nothing about it says it was just driven because the hood is cold as ice.
Yeah, I don't think this is our truck.
It is unusual that it is black with a red stripe, but it's been parked there for some time. The odds are it's probably not it, but we're still curious about it. So what are we going to do? We're going to find the right one with a warm hood and maybe a warm body behind the wheel.
It looks like it's time to play alarm clock again. Let's go start waking some people up.
Yes, sir.
Headquarters, Lieutenant Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
But before Kenda can proceed with his plan to canvass the area, a call from the station suggests he should immediately change course.
Lieutenant, I got a gentleman here. He walked into headquarters. He brought us the gun that he says was used in the shooting that occurred earlier this evening.
The guy reports that this gun came from the shooting on Bruno Circle, which is the shooting where our victim, Willie McCarty, died. And he believes that this is the murder weapon.
10-4, do you know how he got to the station?
Yes, sir. He drove here by himself.
you know what he was driving?
It is a black pickup truck.
Do you have any further description of the pickup truck?
Yes, sir. Had a red
Stripe running down the side.
So here's truck number 2, but this is the right truck. We've lost interest in our cold hooded pickup truck. I'm going to go meet the warm body driving the warm pickup truck.
At CSPD's operations center, Kenda gets a look at the potential murder weapon.
How you doing?
Hey, Lieutenant, here's what I got for you.
She opens it up, and laying in this pile of pillow stuffing material is a .380 semi-automatic pistol.
Now, that definitely matches the caliber of the bullet casing we found at the crime scene. Where's the guy that brought it in?
He's actually in the back in one of the interrogation rooms waiting on you.
All interrogation rooms, just like in the movies, have a two-way mirror. I want to look at this guy before I talk to him to see what he's doing.
According to the desk manager, the man's name is Sean Manchester.
He's relatively calm, but he has long blonde hair, and he's in his 20s, and he's white. He is who Nadine saw leave that house. No question in my mind. The question is, what role did he play in our little scenario? That I don't know. But he does.
Well, first thing I need to inform you that this is a homicide investigation. And considering you walked in here with what appears to be the murder weapon, are you comfortable talking to me without an attorney present?
Yes, sir. I don't need anybody.
He is cooperative. He can't wait to tell me what he knows.
And you should tell me what happened to Willie last night.
I'm anticipating that he's going to confess to this crime. What he says next surprises me.
Well, I didn't kill Willie, but I think I might know who did.
It would be odd for him to have this gun and show up in a police station with it if he's not the shooter. But I'll take him at his word for now. I am all ears. We're trying to determine what has happened to Willie McCarty and who might be responsible for it. All of a sudden, out of the sky drops the prime suspect in this event. He has a murder weapon in his possession, and we don't have to go to him. He comes to us.
Tell me what happened to Willie last night.
Well, last night I went over to Willie and Sang's place to help them work on a limo.
But when he got there, Sang and Willie were nowhere to be found.
So I said, okay, I'll just get to work by myself. Well, I've been working for a little while, and then from inside the house, I hear an argument start to escalate.
What were you doing in it? What? Screw Kim again? What are you talking about? You're fucking crazy. No. Get the hell out of here, Willie!
All of a sudden, I hear a strange popping noise.
So he goes in the house to see what's happening. He sees Willie laying on the floor, sees some blood on his head.
He claimed that up until that moment, he really didn't realize that there'd been a shooting, that he thought maybe Willie had fallen down the stairs and banged his head or something.
I see Sang, and he has this box in his hands. I'm like, hey, what happened, man? He just hands me the box. He tells me to get out of here and drive.
Drive where? Drive. Just drive.
Sean tells Kenda that shortly after he drove away, something fell out of the box onto the floor of his truck.
Oh my God.
Now he's putting two and two together in his own head. My God. Willie's been shot, and Sang must be the guy that shot him.
Well, I sure as hell don't want to be the accomplice to a murder, so I decided I'd bring the gun to you guys.
His story makes absolute perfect sense to me. I don't think he's involved in this, but I certainly know who is. Sang and Kim have been lying from the beginning. They know exactly what happened. They were hopeful they could get past this by continuing to lie. Because after all, the police will never figure this out. Oh yeah, we will. And then we're going to make you eat the lies you've been telling us. and we're going to hammer the last nails in your coffin of guilt with those very same lines.
I appreciate you coming in and helping out.
Yes.
All right, we need to get Sang and his girlfriend Kim in here. I want to talk to the girlfriend first.
You never go directly to a suspect, you go to those close to him first. You circle the suspect, and you recover information from those loosely connected.
I'm going to cut right to the chase. We know you've been lying to us. We've already talked to Sean Manchester, and he told us everything. He also gave us the gun.
She knows what's happened here.
Kim tells Kenda that ever since Willie moved in with her and Sang, her boyfriend has grown increasingly jealous.
He thinks I've been sleeping with Willie. I haven't. I was in the upstairs bedroom and Willie came to use the bathroom for like a second. Sang saw him coming down the hall and freaked out.
Get the hell out of here, Willie! Admit it, you're him.
Sang, what are you doing? She grabbed the gun and just ran off. I went to go check on my son, and all I heard was just them yelling downstairs.
Kim says she hears that argument get louder and more involved. Then she hears a popping sound.
I ran downstairs. That's when I saw them.
She starts to cry, and we end the interview at that point. Now it's going to be Sang's turn.
Have a seat.
How you doing, Sang?
I told you, I have no idea what happened to Willie.
Cut the crap, Sang. We already know what happened.
I don't even own a gun.
We talked to Sean Manchester. He told us everything.
Then he just stops dead in his tracks and stares at us.
I'll tell you everything that happened, Willie. If I could just have a cigarette before, please.
Sure.
There are certain things you can always do with a suspect. Show him some kindness. Give him the impression that maybe you're not such a bad guy after all. And he just may tell you his entire story.
So we were in the garage, working on the limo, and Willie said he had to go to the bathroom. But when I went inside, I saw him walking from the bedroom where Kim was.
Night, Kim.
What the?
This absolutely sets him off.
You piece of What were you doing in there?
Wasn't doing nothing.
You screwing Kim?
What are you talking about? You're talking crazy.
He is emotionally out of control about this. When you're emotionally out of control about anything, you become dangerous.
Willie, you gotta leave. Get the hell out of here. You were screwing him, weren't you?
He was just using the bathroom.
Sang is not even listening to her. Sang is so distressed that Willie's not responding to his demand that he threatens him with the gun.
Out! Willie, leave!
You're out of here.
Get out of here, Willie, get out! I don't know what happened, okay? My finger wasn't even on the trigger. We were scuffling. He might have grabbed my hand.
Sang says, maybe I hit my elbow on the wall. Maybe he hit my hand. Now, what is he doing? He's admitting shooting Willie, but he's minimizing his role in it. I think his chain of events cannot be true. The face-to-face struggle didn't happen, or he couldn't have got shot in the back of the head. How does one get your bumped elbow around 180 degrees to the rear of Willie's head when the trigger is pulled? His story is both.
Out! I need you out now!
You know what? You're out of your mind. You're crazy.
Leave!
He's truthful about doing it. He's truthful about killing him. He's not truthful about how. The fact that he did is close enough for me.
Go ahead and stand up. We're going to have to handcuff you.
Please. No, this isn't supposed to happen.
You're under arrest for murder.
Sir, please, no, please.
After we place him in custody, we do a blood and urine test to scan for drugs. And our man Sang is using methamphetamines. They test positive in his system. Methamphetamines will heighten your sense of paranoia, your sense of rage, your rising to anger, your feelings of jealousy. All your emotions are piqued by the chemicals they've introduced into your brain.
If he has a proclivity of jealousy and that sort of behavior, then the drugs are going to just enhance that and make it worse. when you have drugs, guns, and jealousy involved, bad things are going to happen.
12 months later, Sang Vasquez pleads guilty to manslaughter and drug possession. Because of prior drug convictions, he is sentenced to a combined total of 24 years behind bars.
I wonder if Sang has any regret or remorse for what he's done. Like I told him during the sentencing hearing, I forgive him, but I won't forget. Every day my brother's not here, I won't forget. We won't forget. I miss Billy so much.
This is another example, in my view, of a friend doing something incredibly violent to another friend. It's the worst thing that you can imagine. This is someone you would go to lengths for. You weren't planning on dying for the friend. And the friend wasn't planning on making you die.
Coming up, when a patient's trip to a local hospital turns into a crime scene, Kenda is faced with one of the most extraordinary cases of his career.
When that alarm went off, her immediate thought was, somebody's trying to kill this woman. I'm very seldom surprised. This one surprised me.
Lt.Joe Kenda is headed home after another long day when his radio crackles.
Dispatch to Kenda.
Go for Kenda.
The worst moments for call out is when you haven't even gone home. And it just seems really unfair.
There's reports of a patient at Penrose Hospital that may have been murdered in their hospital bed. It's not entirely clear what's going on.
10-4, I'll be right there.
Penrose Main Hospital is a large hospital in Colorado Springs. Because this was broadcast over police band radios that the press monitors, every press person I've ever known is acting as if this is the story of the year.
Excuse me, ladies.
When it begins as chaotic, it stays that way. So I, of course, can hardly wait to get to the 10th floor, because this is going to be the same way. But it'll at least be a smaller crowd. It was very peaceful in the elevator. Nothing was happening. Then the doors open and everything is happening. Obviously, people believe that something awful has happened here.
There's been a murder in the hospital.
So I speak to the first officers on the scene to get a basic understanding of what has occurred here and who may or may not be involved in it.
Is the scene secured or someone still on the loose?
No, the hospital's totally secure. In fact, we don't even have a murder. But there is some concern from some of the hospital staff that someone attempted to kill a patient by tampering with their IV.
Kenda learns that the patient whose life was allegedly in danger is 44-year-old Carol Taylor.
Our victim is in bed. She broke her leg, and she's developed blood clots in her leg.
Yes. How you doing, Lieutenant Kenda? Can you tell me about the patient?
We're using an IV in her arm to administer heparin.
And what happened?
Well, we're using the IMED infusion pump, and it has an alarm on it if there's any kind of problem.
If the IMED infusion pump detects something's wrong, it turns itself off and sounds an audible alarm. In other words, it is designed to prevent the patient from getting an incorrect amount or an incorrect type of liquid.
And what happened?
Well, the alarm went off. 412. I got it.
You feel like you're going to... I don't know what the noise is.
Oh, my God. What happened?
We don't know.
Just what happened?
Start going.
Somehow, the IV line, it was pulled from her arm.
What's your opinion about what happened to her?
I think someone tried to kill her.
Patricia tells me her immediate thought was, someone has tampered with that pump, tampered with the medication, or maybe even inserted something in there that's not supposed to be there.
Why do you say that?
Well, I checked her vitals and everything was okay. So if something was put into the pump, it didn't get to her.
Mind if I have my guy look at the pump?
Sure.
So we already have our crime lab people there, and they freely admit to me that they're not really that familiar with medical equipment. So we get a hospital employee who deals with these things all the time. She comes upstairs and assists the tech, and they look this thing over.
Now, this shouldn't be here.
Hey, Lieutenant, can you come take a look at this?
What is it?
We're treating her with heparin. It should be clear. It looks like water. This is a milky substance that shouldn't be there.
I don't know what it is, and neither do they. But what I suspect is someone injected something into that line they believed would kill her. We need to get it tested to find out what it is.
All right, let's get this to the lab as soon as possible. Make sure you haven't put a rush on it so we can find out what's in there.
Yes, sir.
Since the only people in the room with Carol Taylor when her IV alarm went off were her husband and her 2 children, Kenda needs to talk to them first.
The children are with their mother. This is not the time to talk to them. I'm going to start with the husband.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a colonel in the Army. I've been in for 27 years. I'm chief of oral surgery at Fitzsimmons Army Medical Center.
He's not the least bit distressed. He's very quiet, very calm, no emotion, something you don't expect to see. I thought that was odd.
Well, listen, I have to ask. I mean, you were in the room with all the alarms going off. Would you have any reason why you'd want to harm your wife?
No, of course not. Why would I want to hurt my wife?
He said, we have our moments like all married couples, but nothing serious. And we just came to visit, and I don't understand all the fuss. And he's minimizing all of this like it's all some big mistake. I disagree. Whatever this is, mistake is not the word that comes to mind.
Keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't go anywhere.
Yes, Lieutenant.
And where'd they move the wife to?
I think they put her in 609.
Come with me.
I take another detective with me, and I direct the detective to take the children from the room.
Hi, Carol. I'm Lieutenant Kenda.
Hi.
I need to ask you about what happened earlier.
Okay. Well, there's not much to tell, really.
She's just looking at me and nodding, and I'm thinking, you're awfully matter-of-fact for what's just happened here.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible that your husband might want to try to harm you?
My husband? Oh, no. We have a wonderful marriage. We just get along great.
I saw her reaction and her demeanor as bizarre. It's as if she wants this all to go away.
Listen, believe me, everybody's making something out of nothing. I'm fine.
So I've gotten a bizarre story from the husband. Now I talk to the wife, and she's telling me that he's a wonderful husband, maybe even the husband of the year, and she's his happy little bride. And you think to yourself, oh, madam, please permit me to disagree about him being the husband of the year. So we arrive at this hospital for the mysterious investigation of this strange little pump that says bad things are happening to this patient. We have liquid in a pump that's not supposed to be there. We have the victim who doesn't see herself as a victim and a suspect who says he's done nothing.
Clearly, there is something wrong because you have 2 people telling you that they're just ecstatically happy, and yet someone has tried to kill the wife.
I need to find somebody that's going to talk to me about these people. Are there skeletons in the Taylor closet? And if there are, does somebody know about them?
To learn more about Carol and Dennis Taylor, Lieutenant Kenda reaches out to a family friend who's worked alongside Dennis for years.
Mr. Coleman?
Hey.
Thanks for driving out to see me.
Sure. So what do you want to know about Dennis?
Can you tell me a little bit about his marriage to Carol? Did they get along?
Oh, they've
had a bit of a rough road lately.
Stan is able to describe the life of Dennis and Carol Taylor pretty well because he knows them well.
So Dennis told me that Carol's been verbally abusive to him, that she's been demeaning him.
Every time we go to one of these receptions, you're drinking, you're drunk. It drives me crazy. You are so pathetic.
He is surprised to learn that she's punched him before. Things are not good between the two of them.
He started drinking way too much. He started seeing other women.
Stan explains that even though Carol knew about her husband's extramarital affairs, she refused to grant Dennis a divorce.
Stanley says further that Dennis has told him that he wants out of this marriage, but that Carol has threatened him, that she will report his behavior to the military, the drinking, the extramarital affairs, all of which are in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice if he tries to divorce her.
Stan Pillman also tells Kenda that Carol enjoyed the privileges of being a military wife too much to lose them to divorce.
So you think Dennis felt like he was trapped in this relationship with no way out?
Yes, sir. Pretty much.
Stan Pillman's statement provides Kenda with a clear-cut motive for why Dennis Taylor would try to kill his own wife.
He wants rid of her because she makes him unhappy. He selected a new path to get that done.
But Kenda is lacking physical proof that Dennis Taylor tried to kill his wife, Carol.
What I need now is evidence that there's been a crime.
Excuse me, may I use your phone?
So the lab results to me at this moment are critical. So I call the laboratory from the hospital.
Hey, Russ, it's Kenda. You guys calling to check on the results of the liquid in that pump I sent over to you?
Yes, it's an insecticide called diazinon.
Basically, diazinon is poison. It's designed to kill ants, spiders, cockroaches, creepy crawlers of any description.
Now, this diazinon, if it was ingested into a human, would it kill him?
Oh, yes, they would not be long for this world.
Should be dead in a matter of minutes, in excruciating pain. Ultimately, you would burn to death from the inside out.
Thank you.
Now I know what it is. I know what it will do. I know who put it there, and I know the reason.
Dennis, we've been investigating what happened here. The story you're giving us isn't adding up.
You, my man, are responsible for trying to kill your wife. Not only are you a lousy married person, you're also a lousy killer.
Stand up, Colonel. You're under arrest for attempted murder. Give me your coat.
I look in the pocket.
This isn't looking very good for you, Dennis.
There's a plunged hypodermic, milky white substance in the bottom.
You know, if you'd like an attorney before you say anything.
No, I don't want an attorney.
You want to tell us what's going on here?
I was walking around the store earlier today in the garden section.
And I saw this bottle, and I saw the skull and crossbones. They're big on the bottle, skull and crossbones. And it just came to me that this is the way out of this.
And so I just bought it. And then I went to the hospital.
Did you bring the syringe with you as well?
No. When the kids were visiting with Carol, I just walked by the nurse's station. And I saw some unattended, so I just grabbed one.
He's a doctor of oral surgery. He knew how to fill a syringe. He knew how to get it into an IV.
He says he went to his car, opened the trunk. In the trunk is the Kmart bag containing diazinon. Removes the cap, puts the needle in, draws it full of diazinon, and goes back to the room.
I'm really proud of you.
He slips his hand below the pump, pulls up the IV line, gets it under the level of the bed, injects the line, plunges the needle all the way, and then sticks it back in his pocket.
According to Dennis, that's when his plan hit a snag.
What was that?
I don't know.
Are you okay? Are you feeling?
Maybe the battery died.
I think he hit the wrong spot on the IV. He got very rattled when the moment of truth came.
The alarm went off, so I panicked and I pulled the IV out of her arm.
Oh!
Just in case.
Yeah, that boy. Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
I think fear of arrest is what stopped him. Maybe he thinks that's going to save him, but he's taken a substantial step in the commission of this crime. So that's not going to work.
Kenda charges Dennis Taylor with attempted murder, but the case never reaches a civilian courtroom. Instead, the disgraced colonel will meet his fate in front of his Army peers.
He is a highly ranked officer, and he has embarrassed the officer corps of the United States Army by his behavior.
Despite his wife's efforts to save him, the military insists on trying Dennis Taylor in front of an Army board comprised of 10 officers. He is found guilty and sentenced to 18 months of hard labor. They also strip him and his family of all Army privileges.
They operated under a scorched earth policy regarding this entire case. They wanted to send a message.
He was kind of at the point where he was so desperate to end this situation. And, you know, if he'd been slightly more deft about it, slightly less nervous, there's a good possibility he would have pulled this off and never been caught.
Such a crazy thing to do. You know, when you get married, you take an oath. I will love you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, and all the various components of that statement, until death do us part. Dennis decided it was time to move to the final phrase and have death do it.
Illinois, 1978. A house that should have been loud with breakfast plates and Sunday radio is silent, too silent, until a neighbor notices the paper stacked like a small white gravestone on the porch, day after day, and the dog that never barks, not once, not even at the mailman, not even at the wind. The town calls it a quiet street. The kind where porch lights stay on for one another. The kind where you could leave your keys in the ignition and only worry about the winter freezing the engine. And then, in one ordinary week that refuses to stay ordinary, a single phone call turns the whole block into a crime scene and the entire county into an audience holding its breath, because what's inside that house doesn't match the town's story of itself, and the mismatch is violent, final, and impossible to explain. The address is easy to find, but nothing about it feels easy when the first patrol car rolls up and the officer steps out into air that smells like cut grass and exhaust. The lawn is trimmed. The curtains are drawn, not in a neat way, but in a hurried way, as if someone grabbed the fabric and yanked it closed with an open palm. No broken windows. No splintered door frame. No dramatic signs of forced entry. Just a front door with a deadbolt, a knob, and a little brass plate polished by years of routine hands. The kind of door you'd expect to swing open to coffee and conversation. The kind of door that now refuses to open because something on the other side has changed the rules. The officer knocks. Once. Twice. His knuckles sound too loud. A second car arrives. A third. Radios crackle. A supervisor steps into the yard, glances at the porch steps, at the mailbox flag hanging down, at the stillness that doesn't feel like peace. The neighbor who called stands behind a shrub like he's trying not to watch, and yet cannot stop watching. Someone asks if they've checked the back. Someone else says the back is latched. The dog is inside. Nobody answers. And in that stretch of seconds, those thin, stretched seconds, everything in the town is still normal, still salvageable, still a misunderstanding waiting to be laughed off, until the decision is made and the door is breached. When they go in, the house is dim and cool. The air is wrong. Not just stale. Wrong. Like time has stopped and started again without telling anyone. The first thing they notice is the television set in the living room, dark screen reflecting their flashlights like black water. Then the smell hits, metal, damp fabric, something sweet that doesn't belong. One officer steps forward, and his boot touches something on the carpet that shouldn't be there, a small object that rolls away too easily. He looks down and sees it, a child's marble, blue and white, a tiny planet displaced from a kid's game, shining under the beam like it wants to be found. He bends, picks it up, and in that moment he understands the terrible truth of it. The only things that can stay perfectly clean in a house like this are the things nobody has touched since the day it happened. The family name is one you'd recognize if you lived there. Not famous. Not wealthy. Not secretive. Just present. The father worked a job that paid the bills and earned him nods at the diner. The mother ran a tight house and volunteered for school events. The kids, 2 of them, depending on which neighbor you ask, because even now people argue over the details like the argument itself can change the ending, were seen on bicycles, on sidewalks, at the corner store with sticky hands and penny candy. Nobody in this town thought they were headed for a headline. Nobody in this town thought the word, slaying, could be attached to an address they could point to from memory. But it is. And once it is, it never comes off. The crime scene is not a messy Hollywood explosion. It's worse. It's controlled. It's quiet. Whoever did this didn't come crashing through like a storm. They moved like a person who knew where the floorboards creak, like a person who wasn't worried about time. The kitchen is tidy, almost. A dish towel hangs wrong, twisted. A chair is pulled out a few inches as if someone stood up too fast and didn't push it back. On the counter, there's a grocery list. Ordinary words. Milk. Bread. Something for the kids. The list sits there like it's mocking everyone, like it's daring the detectives to argue with how normal it looks. Then they find them. The officers back out. Some go pale. Someone swears under his breath. Someone else says nothing at all, because there are moments words can't survive. The supervisor calls it in with a voice that's steady only because it has to be. Ambulances arrive, then stop, then wait, because there's nothing to transport. The coroner is called. The state police are called. The press scanner picks it up, and the first reporter who hears the coded language doesn't need to be told. Family. Multiple. Suspected homicide. No sign of entry. And suddenly, every radio in every kitchen in town starts murmuring the same dark music. Outside, the neighborhood becomes a silent theater. Curtains twitch. People stand behind their own porch posts like witnesses at an execution. Mothers pull their kids inside by the wrist. Men who never locked their doors start checking their deadbolts twice. A woman at the end of the street starts crying without really knowing why, as if the house is emitting a frequency that makes grief contagious. The sheriff's department tapes off the yard, but tape can't block what has already spilled into the town's bloodstream. The father's wallet is there. The mother's purse is there. Their car is in the driveway. Keys on a hook. Money in the jar. Jewelry untouched. It doesn't scream robbery. It screams something else. Something personal. Something cold. Investigators fan out. They photograph everything. They bag everything. They dust for prints on surfaces that shouldn't be touched. They lift fibers from the carpet. They search the trash. They log the marbles. The list. The twisted towel. They mark the chair's position with chalk like the chair itself might testify if asked correctly. A detective kneels near the back door and looks at the lock. No damage. Another detective checks the windows, latched. There's a phone in the hallway and the receiver is on the cradle. No emergency call. No last-second plea. That's what makes it terrifying. Not the violence itself. Violence happens everywhere. People tell themselves that's the story they use to sleep, but the absence of panic. The absence of struggle. The absence of noise. No one heard screams. No one heard breaking glass. No one heard a car tearing off. In a town where the sound of a dropped trash can become gossip, a whole family disappears behind closed curtains and nobody hears it happen. The case begins with a question that keeps getting uglier the longer you stare at it: how? The sheriff gives a statement on the courthouse steps. His face is tight, his jaw working like he's chewing nails. He tells people to stay calm. He tells them to report anything unusual. He tells them the public is not in danger, because that's what they always say, the phrase that feels like a blanket until you realize blankets don't stop bullets. A reporter asks if there are suspects. The sheriff says it's too early. Another asks if it could be someone they knew. The sheriff pauses for half a beat, and that pause says more than his words ever could. They start with the obvious. Family arguments. Financial trouble. Affairs. Someone holding a grudge. They interview neighbors, co-workers, teachers. They ask who visited the house. Who had keys. Who stopped by unannounced. The mother's best friend says she was happy. The father's co-worker says he was tired but normal. A teacher says one child had a bruise the week before, small, nothing, kids fall, but now every small thing becomes a warning retroactively assigned. The mailman says the dog always barked. The dog didn't bark this week. The dog's silence becomes a clue, a character witness, a statement made without words. Whoever came in was not a stranger, or was a stranger who didn't smell like one, or carried something that fooled the animal's instinct. Someone mentions a late-night car seen 2 blocks away, headlights off, moving slow. Someone else mentions a man at the gas station with Illinois plates from a county nobody recognizes. Someone else mentions nothing at all but looks down while doing it. And the detectives collect it all, every whisper, every shaky memory, every detail that might be invention or fear, because in a case like this, the truth often arrives wearing the clothes of rumor. By day 3, the town has turned into a bulletin board. People pin their theories to it like desperate prayers. A drifter. A cult. A jealous ex. A debt collector. A stranger passing through. The most common theory is the one that lets everyone feel safest. It was someone from somewhere else. Not one of us. Not from this town. Not from these streets. Because if it's one of us, then the danger isn't outside. It's inside. It's sitting next to you at church. It's laughing with you at the high school football game. It's borrowing sugar from your kitchen with hands that have done worse things than stir coffee. And then, a detail leaks, the kind of detail that doesn't feel like information so much as a wound. There was something missing. Not money. Not valuables. Something else. Something that makes detectives exchange looks instead of words. Something that makes the case file thicker in one instant. A small item. A photograph, perhaps. A specific object that someone took on purpose, like a trophy, like a message, like a key. The press doesn't know what it is yet, but the press knows it exists, and the press senses what it means. This wasn't just about ending lives. This was about leaving behind a shape of absence. The state lab rushes tests. Blood typing. Fibers. Partial prints that smudge into nothing. A cigarette butt found outside, maybe relevant, maybe not. A boot print in soft soil near the side yard, old, new, impossible to date. The evidence looks promising until it doesn't. One clue points left, another points right, and the rest points straight into fog. The more the investigators study the house, the more the house seems to study them back, offering just enough to keep them there, and never enough to let them leave with certainty. They track everyone who had reason to be angry. They pull names from the father's work. The mother's social circle. They examine phone records and find nothing dramatic, no threatening calls, no repeated hang-ups. They check credit, bank statements, anything that could reveal pressure. They find the normal stresses of a normal family. Bills. School expenses. A car that needed repairs. Nothing that predicts slaughter. Nothing that explains why an entire household would be erased and left behind like a warning sign nobody can read. And the headline forms, even before the ink is dry. It circulates like a virus. Illinois 1978 family slaying, case shocks community. People read it, then read it again, because the brain doesn't accept it the first time. Then the second headline comes, sharper, crueler, built from that leaked detail, no forced entry, no calls for help, killer walked in like they belonged. And after that, the third, baffling clue found at scene, investigators refuse to comment. Refuse to comment. Those words don't calm anyone. They ignite the imagination. They make people invent a monster in the shape of their own fear. At the funeral, the church is packed. Men who never cry wipe their eyes with the backs of their hands. Women clutch each other like they might fall. The pastor speaks about faith, about endings, about peace. But peace is not in the room. Peace is outside, waiting somewhere else, refusing to enter a town that now understands how thin its walls really are. After the service, people stand in clusters and talk softly, as if volume itself could summon the killer back. One woman says, it had to be someone who knew them. Another says, no. No. Don't say that. And they both fall quiet, because both possibilities are unbearable. Weeks pass. Leads come in fast and sloppy. The sheriff's office fills with tips. People call in anything. A stranger at a bar. A truck on the highway. A shadow in a backyard. A bad feeling. Detectives chase them all. Miles on the odometer. Coffee cooling in cups. Cigarette smoke in small offices. They knock on doors in other counties. They sit across from men who look offended, men who look amused, men who look afraid. They ask the same questions. Where were you? Who can vouch for you? Did you know them? Did you ever meet them? And every answer is either a dead end or a thread that snaps when pulled. The case gets a nickname, because the human mind hates unnamed terror. They call it the household murder. They call it the quiet street slaying. They call it the curtains case. The name changes depending on who's telling the story, but the story always ends the same way. No one knows who did it, and no one knows why, and the house sits there with its curtains drawn like eyelids over a dead stare. Then, one afternoon, a detective opens a drawer in the evidence room and sees the marble again, the blue and white swirl trapped behind plastic. He holds it under the fluorescent light and watches the tiny planet shine. A child's toy. A small thing. A small thing that survived. And it hits him, hard, sudden, that the smallest things are sometimes the most brutal reminders, because they prove the family was real, was ordinary, was here, until they weren't. He sets the marble down, and in the quiet of that room, with files stacked like tombstones, he feels the case settle into its first true shape, the shape that will haunt the department for years, not a puzzle you solve, but a wound you carry. Outside, the town keeps living because it has to. Kids go to school. Men go to work. Women shop for groceries and glance at the doors twice. But the street with the house is different now. People drive slower past it. Some won't drive past it at all. At night, the porch lights burn brighter, like the town is trying to outshine whatever darkness slipped in once and proved it could slip in again. And somewhere, unseen, unbothered by candles and prayers, the person who did it, if they are still alive, keeps breathing the same air, walking under the same sky, carrying whatever was taken from that house like a secret that refuses to rot. And the most frightening part is not what the detectives know. It's what they don't. Because in Illinois, in 1978, a family was erased with no forced entry, no cries for help, and no clear path out, and the silence that followed didn't feel like relief, it felt like the beginning of something that would never truly end. By the second week, the town stops saying, if, and starts saying, when, not because hope is alive, but because hope is easier to carry than the other thing, the heavier thing, the thing that sits on your chest at night and whispers, what if you never know? The sheriff's office becomes a maze of paper, cigarette haze, and ringing phones, and every ring feels like it could be the one that cracks the case open or the one that drags it deeper into mud. Detectives sleep in their clothes. Coffee turns cold before it reaches lips. Notebooks fill with names that look harmless on paper and dangerous in the dark, co-workers, cousins, old friends, men who passed through town once and left nothing behind but a receipt and a vague description. The house itself changes, too. The crime scene tape comes down eventually, but the air around that address stays taped off in people's minds. Kids ride bikes on the other side of the street, faster than usual, like speed can outrun fear. Neighbors stop watering their lawn when the sun goes down. Porch lights burn until morning. And in the sheriff's office, the evidence room door swings open and closed so often it might as well be breathing, bags of fibers, photos, a knife from a kitchen drawer that never should have mattered, the blue and white marble sealed in plastic like a tiny witness in protective custody. State police step in with their polished shoes and their clipped voices. They bring new cameras, new forms, new confidence. They say the right things about resources and coordination, but nobody in that building misses the quiet implication: you've never handled something like this. The local detectives bristle, then swallow it, because pride is useless when a family is gone and the killer is a ghost that might still be walking. A command post is set up in a spare room with a map of the neighborhood pinned to a board. Colored pushpins begin to sprout like infected pores: where the car was seen, where the boot print was found, where the cigarette butt sat in damp grass, where a neighbor swears he heard a door close in the middle of the night and didn't bother to look out because it sounded like nothing. But nothing is exactly what people regret. They start with time. They always start with time, because time is the first fence around truth. When was the family last seen alive? Who saw them? Where? What did they say? Did they seem rushed? Did they seem afraid? A cashier at the corner store remembers the mother buying bread and saying he was making soup later. A clerk at the gas station remembers the father paying in cash, smiling, ordinary. A teacher remembers one of the kids in the hallway, backpack half-zipped, marbles spilling and being scooped back up in a hurry, like the universe decided to leave one behind on purpose. The timeline tightens. The net shrinks. And still, nothing solid swims inside it. They canvass the neighborhood again, but this time they do it with sharp questions, not polite ones. Did anyone have a key? Did anyone ever stay over? Did anyone recently show up uninvited? Did anyone mention being followed? One neighbor says she saw a man on the sidewalk, hands in pockets, watching the house like he was waiting for permission. Another says that's nonsense, she saw no one, stop stirring panic. A teenager admits he and his friends used to cut through the backyard to shortcut to the park, but he swears they didn't that week, not after dark, not with rumors turning the street into a grave. Everyone has a fragment. Nobody has the picture. Then the phone calls begin, the kind that make the hair on the back of a detective's neck lift, because they are too convenient, too dramatic, too much like a movie someone wants to star in. A man calls from 2 towns over and says he had a dream about the house and knows where the killer buried the weapon. A woman calls and sobs that her husband came home late that night with blood on his sleeve and told her it was a deer. Another call is calmer, colder, a voice that says only one sentence and hangs up: check the river. No name. No number. Just the click of a line going dead like a pulse stopping. They check the river anyway. They drag it with hooks and ropes. They send divers into black water that swallows flashlights. They pull up tires, bottles, rusted metal, and the kind of junk that accumulates in a place people use as a dumping ground when they don't want to feel watched. For hours, they find nothing that speaks. Then they find something that doesn't scream but doesn't need to: fabric caught on a snag near the bank, waterlogged and heavy. A child's sweatshirt. A color the family is known for. A size that fits one of the kids. It comes up dripping, muddy, and for a second the command post goes silent like the whole town is holding its breath through the same lungs. But it isn't enough. The lab can't pin it down. It could have drifted. It could have been planted. It could have been stolen from a clothesline by some idiot kid and dropped by accident. In the cold logic of investigation, could is a trap. It looks like a step forward and turns out to be a circle. Inside the sheriff's office, the detectives sit at a table with crime scene photos spread out like tarot cards. The chair pulled slightly from the kitchen table. The twisted towel. The closed curtains. The absence of struggle. One detective points at the hallway phone. Why didn't they call? Another answers without looking up. Because they couldn't. Or because they didn't think they needed to. That second answer lands like a brick. Because if they didn't think they needed to, then whoever was in that house wasn't a threat at first glance. It was someone familiar. Someone expected. Someone who could step inside without setting off alarms in the mind. The dog's silence keeps returning like a bad chorus. Every time they hit a dead end, the dog's silence appears again, paws on the floor, nose in the air, not barking. The animal doesn't testify with words, but its behavior is a fingerprint. A stranger would have been noise. A stranger would have been teeth. But there was no noise. No neighbor heard it. The dog didn't announce it. The killer moved like they belonged. So they start pulling at the circle of belonging. They look at the father's job first. A factory. A warehouse. A place where men punch clocks and swallow their grievances because bills don't care about pride. They interview supervisors, co-workers, the guy who always joked too loudly, the guy who always stared too long. They find a story. Someone argued with the father a month ago over a shift change. Another over a tool that went missing. Small things. Petty. And then there's one name that lands heavier than the rest, a man who was fired the year before, bitter, known for showing up at the plant gates with a look that promised trouble. The detectives bring him in. He sits in the interview room with a smirk that tries to be confidence but keeps slipping into panic around the eyes. He says he didn't do it. He says he's been getting blamed for things his whole life. He says he has an alibi. He names a woman, a bar, a jukebox song. They check. The woman confirms, half-hearted. The bartender remembers him. Time stamps line up. The smirk fades, replaced by something that looks almost like relief, almost like disappointment. Another circle closes without catching anything. They move to the mother's world. School meetings, bake sales, quiet social wars fought with smiles. They talk to her friends. They talk to the husband of her closest friend, because husbands are often where secrets hide, and the friend's husband reacts the wrong way, too defensive, too quick with explanations nobody asked for. The detectives lean in. Their questions sharpen. The man sweats. He says he was home. He says he loved the family. He says how dare you even imply, until the detectives mention a rumor, and his eyes flicker, just once, like a light caught in a mirror. The rumor is ugly. The rumor is the kind people pretend they don't believe until it gives them a way to make the impossible feel personal and therefore manageable. The rumor says the mother was having an affair. The rumor says someone found out. The rumor says passion turned into violence. The detectives hate rumors, but rumors are often built on something real, and they have learned not to ignore what people whisper in darkness. They check phone logs again. They check letters. They check the mother's calendar. They find nothing explicit, nothing that screams romance, but they find patterns, a call that repeats every week, a name that appears too often in innocuous contexts, see you then, scribbled with no who attached. They track down the number. It belongs to a man who works in a neighboring town. A man with a clean record, a clean house, a clean smile that trembles at the edges when detectives step inside. He says he knew the family socially. He says he helped them once with a car issue. He says he has no idea why his number is in their record so often. The detectives watch him lie and tell themselves that lying is not guilt, not always, but it is smoke, and smoke means something is burning. They ask for a polygraph. He agrees too fast. The machine is set up. The questions are simple. His pulse spikes when the name of the mother is spoken. He fails one section, passes another. The examiner shrugs with that practiced caution, inconclusive. Inconclusive is the cruelest word in the English language when you're trying to turn a monster into a handcuffed man. Meanwhile, the press grows teeth. Reporters camp outside the station. Headlines get sharper. Speculation gets louder. Anonymous sources close to the investigation leak details that may or may not be true, and every leak forces detectives to shift, to tighten, to chase control while the case tries to run away. People call the sheriff's office not just with tips, but with demands. Parents demand answers. Churches demand safety. The town council demands reassurance. And the sheriff stands in front of microphones and repeats the same phrases until they sound like lies. Ongoing investigation, no comment, no threat, please remain vigilant. Then, just as the case begins to settle into a swamp of routine interviews and dead-end leads, something hits the office like a thrown rock through glass, an envelope, postmarked from another state, addressed to no one in particular, just, police, written in block letters with a pen pressed hard enough to scar the paper. The clerk who opens it hesitates, then calls a detective over, because the inside feels wrong even before it's read. There's no confession. No signature. Just a single photograph. It's a picture of the family. Smiling. Outdoors. Sunlight on hair. Ordinary joy captured in a rectangle. And for a moment, the detective's heart lifts, irrationally, because the photo looks like life, like the world before the door was breached. Then he notices what's wrong. The photo has been altered, scratched, gouged, defaced. The faces are marked. Not scribbled over in childish rage, but carefully ruined, each face scored in lines that cross at the eyes. The kind of damage someone takes time with. The kind of damage that says, I wanted you to know I saw them like this. I wanted you to see what I did with my own hands. And taped to the back is a strip of paper with a message in the same hard block letters, you missed me. The room goes silent in that special way only fear can create. Radios keep crackling, phones keep ringing, but inside that moment the detectives hear only the blood in their own ears. Because that message is not a clue. It's a taunt. It's a hand reaching out from the dark to tap them on the shoulder and prove the killer is not just a rumor anymore. The killer is watching. They treat the envelope like a bomb. Gloves. Tweezers. Evidence bags. They dust it for prints. They look for saliva on the seal. They check the paper fibers, the ink, the stamp, the route it traveled. They call federal contacts because now there's interstate mail involved, and the case is no longer just a county nightmare. It's a bigger animal, stretching its claws. But the deeper terror isn't the envelope itself, it's what it confirms. The killer wants attention, wants control, wants the town to keep staring at the drawn curtains and wondering who else is being watched. And that transforms every person in that community into a potential target, not because the killer will strike again, but because the killer has already struck and can now haunt them without moving a muscle. The detective who keeps the marble in his mind like a bruise stares at the defaced photograph and feels something cold settle in his gut. The missing item from the house, the thing the press only whispered about, suddenly snaps into sharper possibility. Maybe it was another photograph. Maybe the killer took a piece of their identity, something that could be held, revisited, destroyed slowly. Maybe the killer didn't just remove them from the world. Maybe the killer wanted to own the story. They convene in the command post late at night. Maps. Notes. Coffee rings on paper. The photograph sits in the center like a dead eye. They go over everything again, faster now, more desperate. The late night car. The river sweatshirt. The phone call. The inconclusive polygraph. The fired worker. The friend's husband. The man from the neighboring town. Every clue flickers under fluorescent light like a moth banging against a bulb. Someone says, what if the letter is a fake? Another says, then why send the photo? Someone else says, because it's not about evidence. It's about power. And power is the one thing that makes the whole case make sense and also makes it worse, because you can't fingerprint power, you can't arrest power, you can't put power in a lineup. As the meeting breaks, a patrol officer steps in with a new report, another neighbor, another sighting, another detail that might be nothing and might be everything. A man seen near the house the night before the bodies were found. Not a car. A man on foot. Standing in the shadow between streetlights, face hidden, posture still. The neighbor didn't think to call it in then because the street was quiet and people stand outside sometimes, don't they, watching the night, thinking their own thoughts. But now, the neighbor can't sleep, and the memory keeps replaying, and the neighbor finally realizes that stillness can be a disguise. The detective takes the report and feels the familiar frustration rise, late tips, warped memories, the human brain trying to reconstruct a nightmare with tools built for normal life. He thanks the patrol officer anyway. He walks down the hall. He passes the evidence room. He looks at the door and imagines the killer somewhere out there, maybe driving past the station, maybe smiling, maybe remembering the altered photograph like a prayer. Outside, winter begins to bite. Wind scrapes across bare trees. The town hunches into coats and keeps pretending routine is armor. But in homes across the county, people lie awake listening to every creak, every distant engine, every dog bark that sounds too close, because now they know the worst part of a mystery isn't the unknown, it's the moment the unknown reaches back and proves it knows your address. The envelope doesn't just land on a desk, it detonates in the middle of the investigation, and the blast radius is invisible but enormous, because now every decision feels like it's being watched, every misstep feels like it's being counted, and every detective who walks into that building feels a second pair of eyes on the back of his neck, eyes that don't blink, eyes that already know the answers to the questions they keep asking out loud. The photograph, sunlit smiles carved into with deliberate hate, stays locked in an evidence drawer, but it never really leaves the room. It follows them into meetings, into interviews, into the long, sleepless drive home where headlights smear across the windshield like ghosts. The words on the back, "You missed ME," the kind of sentence that rewires a town, because it turns fear into something personal, something directed, something that can stand in your doorway and grin. They bring in people with titles now. Behavioral specialists. State-level investigators with clipped speech and confident posture. Men who talk about patterns like patterns are a weapon. They sit in a circle of stale coffee and paper and tell the local detectives something they don't want to hear. This is not a crime of sudden rage. This is not a fight that went too far. The control is the point. The silence is the point. The lack of forced entry is the point. The killer didn't break in. The killer walked in. The killer was either welcomed, expected, or skilled enough at appearing harmless that the door unlocked itself for him. And then comes the second truth, colder and harder: the letter might not be from the killer at all. It could be a sick opportunist who saw the news and wanted to feel important. It could be someone who found the photo somewhere, a trash bin, a drawer, a flea market box of forgotten memories, and decided to weaponize it. It could be a high school kid chasing attention with a cruel prank. But even that possibility doesn't relieve anyone, because it doesn't erase the real killer. It just adds another shadow to the room. It means the town now has more than one kind of monster in it. So they do what investigators do when the world becomes fog: they try to turn fog into a map. They go back to the basics with a violence that feels almost like desperation. They rebuild the timeline from scratch. They re-interview every neighbor, every coworker, every classmate, every friend. They ask the same questions in different orders, hoping a nervous brain will stumble into truth. They spread photographs across tables and watch faces react. They listen for the hitch in a breath, the swallow that comes too late, the sentence that starts confident and ends fractured. They learn quickly that grief and guilt can look identical under fluorescent light, and that makes everything worse. At the house, they run another sweep. More thorough. More humiliating in its thoroughness, like the place has to be stripped of dignity to reveal what it's hiding. A detective climbs into the attic and breathes dust and insulation, his flashlight cutting through spider webs. Another crawls under the porch and comes out coated in dirt. They check vents, ducts, crawl spaces, anywhere a person could have hidden, anywhere a weapon could have been stashed, anywhere a missing item could have been tucked like a secret. Nothing. No gun. No knife with a name on it. No trophy. No photograph album ripped open. Just absence, and absence is the most stubborn kind of evidence. Then, in a closet that was logged and searched the first time, a young deputy notices something that shouldn't matter and suddenly does: a shoe box on the top shelf that's slightly misaligned, like it was put back in a hurry. He brings it down. Inside are ordinary things: old receipts, a few photos, a birthday card. But underneath, folded flat, is a piece of paper that looks like it lived in a wallet for years. A small list of numbers. A name. Not a full name. Just a first name and an initial, like someone didn't want to write the whole thing down. The ink is smudged, but readable enough. The detectives stare at it like it's a message from a dead person. They call the number. It rings. A woman answers. Her voice is guarded. The detective introduces himself and hears the line go tense. He asks about the family. There's a pause, long enough to feel like a door being held shut from the inside. Then she says she knew them, a little. The detective asks who the name belongs to. She says she doesn't want trouble. The detective tells her trouble already arrived, trouble killed a family, trouble is sitting in this town like a loaded gun, and if she knows anything she needs to speak. She exhales. She gives a name. A man. Someone the detectives haven't focused on because he's not loud, not dramatic, not the type who gets blamed first. A man who worked on houses. A man who did small repairs, handyman work, quiet jobs paid in cash. A man who had been in that neighborhood more than once. A man who could be expected at the door without raising alarms, who could be known just enough to be let inside, who could walk into a home carrying tools and leave behind nothing but a tightened hinge and a polite nod. They run him. No major record. A few minor incidents. Drunk once. Disorderly once. A divorce that left him angry. An address on the edge of town. A small rented place with a porch that's always in shade. When they drive out there, it's late afternoon, and the sky is that bleak Illinois gray that makes everything look like it's been filmed through dirty glass. They knock. The door opens slowly. He is ordinary. That's the first thing, and it's always the worst thing. He looks like a man you'd pass in a grocery store and never remember. He has hands that suggest work, and eyes that flick away a fraction too quickly when the detectives say the family's name. He invites them in because refusing would look suspicious, and he knows it, and they know he knows it. The room smells like stale beer and sawdust. There's a tool belt hanging on a hook. There's a radio on the counter, silent. The detectives ask where he was the night the family died. He shrugs, says he doesn't remember, says it was a long time ago, says he worked, says he slept. They ask if he ever did repairs at the family's house. He says maybe, he does lots of houses, people call, he fixes things, he doesn't keep a ledger of every doorknob he touched. They ask if he knows the mother. He says everyone knows everyone, doesn't mean anything. The detective pushes a little harder, and for a second, the man's jaw tightens in a way that looks like restraint. Then, the man smiles. Just a little. It's not a friendly smile. It's a smile that suggests he enjoys the sensation of being suspected, like suspicion is attention, and attention is a kind of control. That smile is not evidence. It's not enough for a warrant. But it's enough to make every detective in that room feel the temperature drop. They leave and sit in the car with the engine running, listening to it idle like a heartbeat. One detective says, he's not clean. Another says, we can't prove he's dirty. And the third says nothing at all, because sometimes the truth is a shape you can see but can't touch. They start digging anyway. They talk to his ex-wife. She meets them at a diner and stirs her coffee so hard the spoon clinks like a metronome. She says he wasn't violent at first. She says he was charming, then controlling, then cold. She says he used to disappear for hours and come back with excuses that sounded rehearsed. She says he hated being disrespected. She says he hated being ignored more. She says he kept souvenirs from jobs, small things, not stolen, just forgotten objects that made him feel like he owned pieces of other people's lives. The detective asks what kind of objects. She shrugs and says, keys. Photos. Little junk. Then she looks up. Marbles, she says, and laughs once, sharp and humorless. He used to pick up marbles like they were coins. The detective feels his stomach tighten. They go for a search warrant, and the judge looks tired, skeptical. The evidence is thin. A phone number in a box. A first name and an initial. A behavioral assessment. A feeling. Judges don't sign feelings. Not officially. The detectives push, and the judge finally gives them a narrow warrant, limited scope, limited time, limited hope. They execute it with urgency, because warrants in cases like this feel like fragile permission slips, easily revoked by the next lack of results. They search the man's place from floor to ceiling. They open drawers. They lift mattresses. They check behind the radio. They find tools. They find old work orders. They find a handful of keys in a jar, assorted, unlabeled, like a collection of tiny doors. They bag them. They photograph them. They try each key against the family's old locks back at the station, one by one, the metallic click sounding like a countdown. None fit. Or if one fits, it's too worn to be certain. Too much doubt. Too much grey. In a box under the bed, they find photographs. Not of the family. Of other families. Vacation snapshots. Birthday candles. Kids holding fish. A stranger's joy preserved and stolen, a museum of other people's lives. The detectives stare at the pictures and feel their own skin crawl, because even if these photos were innocently found, the collection itself feels like a signature, like a taste. The man claims he found them in abandoned houses. The detectives ask why he kept them. He says he likes memories. He says he's sentimental. He says, is that illegal? And the way he says it makes the room feel smaller. They don't find the weapon. They don't find blood-stained clothing. They don't find the missing item from the family's house. They don't find a confession waiting like a gift. What they find is something that could be sinister or could be sad, depending on the story you choose to believe, and the law doesn't care about stories. The law cares about proof. While the search unfolds, the town watches. People cluster outside the man's place, pretending they are not there to see. Kids ride bikes past and stare. A reporter stands near the tape and speaks into a microphone with a voice that carries excitement like perfume. Authorities are executing a warrant connected to the 1978 family slaying. The community is holding its breath. Holding its breath. Like they've been breathing freely since the murders. By nightfall, rumors ignite again. Someone says the police found a photo of the family. Someone says they found a bloody shirt. Someone says they found a knife wrapped in cloth. None of it is confirmed. None of it has to be. The rumor itself becomes a narcotic, because it gives the town the sensation of progress, the illusion that the horror is being guided toward an ending. At the station, detectives meet with the prosecutor. The prosecutor's face is hard. He wants a case he can win. He doesn't want a suspect he can't hold. He tells them what they already know: possession of random photos isn't murder. Being creepy isn't murder. Having keys in a jar isn't murder. Not remembering your night from months ago isn't murder. The detectives argue, voices rising, not because they are sure, but because they are terrified of being wrong and letting a killer walk free. The prosecutor says, bring me something that ties him to that house. So they go hunting for something that doesn't want to be found. They revisit the mail route. They talk to postal workers about the taunting envelope. They track postmark patterns. They identify sorting centers. They ask if anyone remembers a man mailing a letter with gloves, with odd behavior, with a stiff posture that screamed secret. Most workers shrug. Thousands of letters pass through hands. A single envelope disappears in the river of paper. They try another angle, handwriting. They compare the block letters on the torn to other notes found in the suspect's home. Receipts. Scribbles. Labels. But block letters are common. Block letters are what people write when they want to hide themselves. And in 1978, the tools that might later solve cases like this, DNA databases, digital tracking, instant cross-state data, don't exist in the way people imagine. The detectives are running with flashlights in a storm. Then a call comes in that changes the temperature again, not because it's helpful, but because it feels like the killer's breath on the line. A woman in another county reports something found behind an old rental house, a hidden bundle of papers wedged between insulation and wood, forgotten by time and dust. She says the rental house used to belong to a man who did repair work. She says she found it while fixing a leak. The dispatcher gets the address and feels her own skin tighten. It's an address linked, loosely, to the handyman suspect. An old place he lived years ago. The kind of coincidence that makes detectives stop moving for half a second, because coincidences in murder cases are either miracles or traps. They drive out fast. Lights off. Sirens silent. Only urgency. In the attic of that rental, they find the bundle, old photos, yellowed. Receipts. A handful of keys. And one item that hits like a punch, an object so small it almost feels stupid to fear it, except fear doesn't care about size. A single blue and white marble, identical to the one from the family's carpet, the swirl pattern matching like a fingerprint in miniature. It's in a little matchbox, wrapped in tissue paper as if it's precious. The detective holds it between gloved fingers and feels his throat go tight. Because you can explain one marble as a coincidence. Kids drop marbles. Marbles roll. But two identical marbles, one sealed in evidence, one hidden in an attic tied to a suspect who collects small souvenirs, that is no longer nothing. That is a whisper turning into a voice. They bag it. They photograph it. They send it to the lab. They compare manufacturing marks, swirl patterns, glass impurities. It sounds absurd, almost, the idea of solving a slaughter with a toy, but the absurd is often where truth hides, because killers forget the small things. Killers underestimate the tiny witnesses. Back at the station, detectives stare at the evidence board. New thread. New hope. New danger. If the marble links, it could be the first physical bridge between the suspect and the family's home. If it doesn't, the whole thing collapses into embarrassment and lawsuits and a killer's laughter somewhere in the dark. They interrogate the handyman again. This time, they don't ask gently. They place the photograph in front of him. Not the defaced one. Another family photo, clean, untouched, and they watch his eyes. His gaze lingers too long on the mother. His mouth tightens. The detective asks about marbles. The man scoffs and says he doesn't play children's games. The detective asks why a marble was found in an attic of his old rental. The man pauses, and in that pause the room fills with the sound of every breath being counted. He says, "Prove it's mine." The detective leans in and says, "We're going to." And for the first time, the man's smile disappears completely. Something else flashes in its place, anger, fear, or the cold calculation of someone weighing how much the truth costs. Outside, the town doesn't know about the marble yet. It only knows the investigation is alive again, twitching, moving, hunting. People lock their doors and listen harder. The street with the drawn curtains remains a scar, but now the scar tingles with the possibility of pain returning. In the police station, a lab technician places the newly found marble under a lens, rotates it slowly, and watches the swirl catch the light like a tiny storm trapped in glass, while detectives hover behind her shoulder, silent, because in that small spinning universe might be the first real step toward a name, and if the name is right, the town's nightmare will finally have a face, and if the name is wrong, the nightmare will learn, once again, how to vanish. The marble turns under the lab lamp like a planet in slow orbit, and for a moment the entire case seems to shrink down to a single piece of glass the size of a thumbnail, because that's how desperation works. It grabs the smallest object in the room and begs it to become a door. The technician rotates it with tweezers, eyes narrowed, the way jewelers look at diamonds and the way surgeons look at a wound. Under magnification the swirl isn't just blue and white anymore, it becomes bands, bubbles, tiny imperfections locked inside the glass like trapped breath. The detectives lean in close enough to fog the lens if they exhale too hard. Someone's pen hovers above a notepad, ready to write the sentence they've been starving for, match confirmed. But the lab isn't a church. It doesn't deliver miracles, not clean ones. The technician keeps rotating, keeps comparing, keeps taking measurements that feel absurdly precise for something that rolled across a child's carpet. And when she finally speaks, her voice is careful, clinical, the voice of a person who knows how easily hope shatters. She says the marbles are the same type. Same era. Same general manufacturing style. Common. Mass-produced. The swirls are similar, but similar isn't identical, and glass is not a fingerprint. She can't say they are from the same batch, not with certainty. She can't put the handyman inside the family's home with that marble alone. She can't turn it into handcuffs. The detectives nod like they accept it, but inside they feel the floor tilt. Because this was supposed to be the bridge. This was supposed to be the first hard line between that quiet street and that quiet man with the jar of keys. Instead it's another could. Another gray smear on a page full of gray. They leave the lab and walk back down the corridor where fluorescent lights buzz like insects, and the case follows them like a shadow that doesn't get tired. Still, they don't let go. They can't. Not after the attic find, not after the ex-wife's words, not after that smile that vanished when the marble was mentioned. They pivot to what the law will accept when science won't: patterns, opportunity, motive, witness statements that survive cross-examination. They pull the handyman's work history like a thread and start tugging hard enough to cut fingers. Who hired him in that neighborhood? Who paid cash? Who gave him spare keys? Who complained about him afterward? Every door they knock on opens into a new version of the same story. He was quiet, he was efficient, he made people uneasy but not uneasy enough to call it danger. One elderly woman remembers him fixing her back step and standing too close while she signed the check, eyes on her hands. Another says he lingered in the hallway like he was memorizing the layout. A man says his wife stopped answering the door after the handyman came by because she felt watched. None of it is illegal. All of it is wrong in the way wrongness often is, nothing you can point to in court, but everything you can feel in your bones. A detective finds an old complaint filed at the sheriff's office years earlier, a report about missing items after the handyman worked at a home, small items, nothing worth going to war over, but enough to make someone feel violated. Keys. A bracelet. A photo from a mantle. The detective reads the report 3 times, then looks up and feels a cold clarity. If the killer took something from the family's house on purpose, a man like this would understand exactly why. They bring him in again. The interview room is the same, but the air is different. This time the detectives don't try to charm him into talking. They lay out facts like weapons, one at a time, slow and deliberate. Your number was in their home. Your old rental had a marble hidden in the attic. You've been in that neighborhood. You keep other people's photographs. He sits back in the chair and lets silence stretch, because silence is a tactic, and he's good at tactics. When he finally speaks, he doesn't deny everything. He denies only what matters most. He says he's never harmed anyone. He says he's a collector, a sentimental man. He says the photos aren't trophies, they're rescued. He says the marble is coincidence. He says the number in the showbox could belong to anyone. He says, "You've got nothing." And then he leans forward, just slightly, and his eyes go flat. "You're chasing ghosts," he says. A detective asks, "Did you send the letter?" The handyman's mouth twitches. "What letter?" he says, too quickly, and the detective feels something spark. But the handyman corrects himself immediately, smooth as oil. "People send all kinds of letters," he says. "You think I'm the only sick person in the world?" That line lands heavy. Not because it's a confession, but because it's true. They try to hold him, but they can't. He walks out of the station a free man, and every step he takes across that parking lot feels like a slap. Reporters catch him at the curb and shout questions. He doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. He slides into his car, closes the door, and for a second the detectives swear he looks at them through the windshield with the faintest trace of amusement, like this is all entertainment. The town reacts the way a town reacts when police look like they're losing. Rumors bloom again, faster, uglier. People start saying the suspect has connections. People start saying the police are incompetent. People start saying the killer is protected by someone in uniform. None of it has proof, but proof is a luxury. Fear spreads without it. Someone sprays a slur across the handyman's porch. Someone else throws a rock through his window. The sheriff condemns it publicly, but privately he understands why it happened. People don't know where to put their rage, so they hurl it at the nearest shape. And then, like gasoline tossed on embers, a second envelope arrives. It's delivered to a local newspaper this time, not the station. The editor opens it in his office, alone, and later he will say the worst part was how ordinary it looked, plain paper, plain stamp, no theatrics, because ordinary is the disguise evil loves most. Inside is a single sheet of paper and a strip of glossy film. The editor stares at the strip, then feels his stomach fold. It's a photo negative. A negative of a picture the public has never seen. The paper holds one sentence, again in block letters, "They didn't scream." The editor calls the police with hands that shake. Detectives arrive fast, collect the envelope, bag it, seal it, and the newsroom becomes another crime scene in a town that's already full of them. They rush the negative to the lab, and when it's developed, it reveals a photograph taken inside the family's home, grainy, harsh flash, the kind of picture snapped quickly. It shows part of a room, a corner of furniture, and on a wall, framed, is a family portrait the detectives recognize from earlier evidence photos. The angle suggests the photographer was standing in the room, inside the house, camera held chest high. It's not proof of murder, not alone, but it's proof of presence. Proof that someone, at some time, stood inside that home and took a picture like a thief stealing a moment. The room goes quiet when detectives see it. Because this isn't rumor. This is intimate. This is someone reaching into the case file and pulling out a piece of the family's life that only the killer, or someone with access to the killer's souvenirs, should have. They tear apart the envelope for prints. They check the stamp for saliva. They test the paper for fibers. They compare the block letters again. The results are the same as before, nothing clean enough to hold. But the message changes the case in another way. It confirms what investigators feared from the beginning: the killer didn't just want to kill. The killer wanted to be unseen while doing it. The killer wanted to control the entire event, including the sound it did not make. They circle back to the handyman with renewed urgency. They ask him again about the letters. He denies. He says he doesn't read newspapers. He says he doesn't even own a camera. The detectives ask if he ever owned one. He says no. His ex-wife says yes, he had a cheap camera, used it rarely, but he liked taking pictures of interesting houses. The detectives check porn records, camera shop receipts, anything that might tie a device to him. In 1978, records are paper and incomplete and easily lost. They find nothing that sticks. So they look wider. If the handyman didn't send the letters, who did? They run the postmark again, trace it to a city sorting center, but the path is a river with too many tributaries. A profiler says the messages could be from the killer, but could also be from a person who knows details through gossip or stolen evidence. Another warns that the photograph could have been taken long before the murders by any visitor. A family friend. A repairman. A realtor. Even the police, during their initial processing. The detectives argue about it until their voices go raw, because the case has become a hall of mirrors. Every reflection looks like a suspect until you realize you're staring at yourself. And then the phone rings with a voice that makes the room feel colder. A man calls from a payphone outside a bar on the interstate. He tells the dispatcher he did it. He says he killed the family. He says he couldn't live with it anymore. He says he wants to confess before God takes him. The dispatcher keeps him on the line while another officer traces the call. They find him fast, hunched near the payphone like a man who has collapsed into himself. He's drunk. He reeks of stale liquor and sweat. He cries when officers approach, tears sliding down his face like he's relieved to be caught. At the station, he confesses again, and the words tumble out fast, messy, full of self-hatred. He describes the house. He describes the street. He says the family begged. He says he didn't mean to do it. Detectives listen with a grim focus, because confessions can be gold, and they can also be poison. They ask him for details only the killer would know. He gets some right. He gets others wrong. He says the wrong number of victims. He places furniture where it didn't stand. He describes a weapon that doesn't match the wounds. He's guessing. He's building a story from newspaper headlines and his own need to matter. The prosecutor watches from behind the glass and shakes his head. The detectives feel their hope curdle into rage. They've been taunted by letters, trapped by maybes, and now they're being used as a stage by a broken drunk who wants to borrow infamy like a coat. They dig into his past anyway. They find he has a history of false confessions, petty crimes, attention-seeking behavior. His family says he's been spiraling. He's released after a psychiatric hold and a warning, and the town hears confession and release and loses its mind. People call the station and scream into the receiver. People demand resignations. People say the police are letting killers walk. The sheriff does another press conference, eyes bloodshot, voice strained, and tells them the confession didn't match the facts. He says, "We're still working." And the cameras capture his face in close-up, the way it looks when a man realizes he's fighting something that doesn't want to be caught. Behind closed doors, detectives feel the case slipping into something worse than unsolved. It's becoming myth. A story everyone knows but no one can resolve. A monster without a name becomes bigger than any real man ever could. They decide to protect the evidence harder. They lock it down. They restrict access. They log every entry into the evidence room. They treat the letters like biohazards. But even with tighter control, paranoia creeps in. One detective starts wondering if the killer has a friend on the inside. Another starts wondering if a reporter paid someone for leaks. Another wonders if the killer never sent the first letter at all, if the whole thing is a chain of opportunists feeding off tragedy like scavengers. Then a clerk at the station mentions something offhand, something so small it almost slips by. She says a man came in last week asking about the case file. Said he was writing a book. Had a calm voice. Wore a brown coat. Left when told no. The detective asks if she remembers his face. She says not clearly. She remembers his hands, clean, but with a faint scar across one knuckle. She remembers he smelled like aftershave, old-fashioned, sharp. She remembers he said, "It's important people don't forget." The detective writes it down, because now even writers are suspects, and the line between curiosity and predation has blurred into nothing. Winter deepens. The street lights glow against snow, and every footprint looks like evidence until it melts. Patrol cars roll slower through neighborhoods. Officers respond to noise complaints with hands already hovering near holsters, because the town's nerves are stretched thin and snapping. People buy locks. People buy dogs. People teach their children not to open doors, not even for someone who says they know dad, not even for someone who smiles. And in the middle of all that tension, the family's house sits empty, an abandoned shell that still feels occupied by the weight of what happened inside. The bank wants to sell it. No one wants to buy it. Teenagers dare each other to approach the porch at night. Some claim they've seen a figure behind the curtains. Others claim they've heard a phone ring from inside when the power is off. The detectives don't believe in ghosts, but they do believe in guilt, and guilt has a way of haunting places until the truth is spoken aloud. In the station, the lead detective stays late, alone, staring at the developed photo from the negative. He studies the angle, the height, the distance from the wall. He imagines the photographer's stance. He imagines the flash. He imagines the moment the shutter clicked, a tiny mechanical sound swallowed by the same silence the killer bragged about. He flips the photo over, as if truth might be printed on the back. Nothing. Just the blank underside of a nightmare. He locks it away, then pauses with his hand on the evidence room door, listening to the quiet of the building. The quiet doesn't feel empty. It feels loaded, like the air is holding secrets in suspension. Somewhere out there, someone mailed those letters. Someone stood in that house with a camera. Someone knows how the family died without sound. And as the detective turns off the office light and steps into the cold night, he can't shake the sense that the case isn't simply unsolved, it's being shaped, guided, teased forward and pulled back by an unseen hand that wants the town to stay afraid, wants the investigators to keep chasing, wants the story to remain unfinished, because an unfinished story is the one place a killer can live forever. The second envelope changes the rules again, because it doesn't just taunt the police, it proves access to the home, access to objects that should have stayed sealed in grief, access to intimacy that makes the case feel less like a hunt and more like a siege. In the days that follow, the station becomes a pressure cooker, and pressure does what it always does, it reveals cracks. Detectives start watching each other's hands. Evidence logs are checked, rechecked, checked again. A deputy who's never been questioned in his life finds himself asked where he was on a Tuesday at 2:13 p.m. when the evidence room was opened. A clerk cries in the restroom because she's tired of being stared at like she might be hiding a murderer in her purse. The sheriff tries to hold the room together with authority and routine, but routine doesn't survive a case like this. Routine dies quietly under the weight of suspicion. They take the developed photograph from the negative and treat it like a map. Not a map of streets, but of bodies, where someone stood, how tall they were, how they held the camera. A technician overlays measurements, angles, distances from wall to floor. The flash reflection suggests the camera was close to the chest, not lifted to the face, like the photographer didn't want to commit fully to being seen in the moment. That detail hits the detectives hard. A person who photographs like that isn't a casual visitor. That's someone thinking about getting caught even while collecting what they came for. Someone who lives in the space between boldness and caution, who wants the trophy but not the handcuffs. They start building a list of people who had legitimate reason to be inside the house before the murders. Repairmen. Realtors. Utility workers. Friends. Anyone who might have taken a picture, even accidentally. The list grows like mold, too many names, too many weak possibilities. They cross-reference it with the other list, the list of people who might have motive. Two lists rarely overlap neatly, but the overlap is where the room goes quiet. Because in the overlap, you don't just have opportunity, you have intent. One name keeps reappearing in that overlap like a stain that won't scrub out, and it isn't the handyman this time. It's a man who sat in the background of early interviews, never loud, never dramatic, always polite. A man connected by threads so thin they didn't seem worth pulling, until someone pulled one and watched the whole knot tighten. He's a friend of a friend. A neighbor's cousin. A guy who did favors. A guy who helped out with locks once. He's the kind of man you'd describe as dependable if you didn't have a reason to describe him as anything else. The reason arrives in the form of an old call record, something the detectives didn't notice at first because it looked ordinary, just another number on the mother's phone log, just another name scribbled once in the margin of a calendar. But now, with eyes sharpened by paranoia, it glows. The number belongs to a business that does something mundane, photography processing. Film development. The kind of place where people drop off vacations and birthdays and wait for memories to come back in glossy paper. In 1978, a place like that keeps handwritten slips. Sometimes they keep negatives for a while. Sometimes they forget to discard them. Sometimes employees take what they shouldn't. The detectives drive to the shop with a hard urgency that feels like instinct. The owner is a middle-aged man with a tired face and careful hands. He's cooperative but wary, because police in your shop means trouble, and trouble kills business. They ask about records from 1978. He laughs once, bitter. "We're not a bank," he says. But then he goes into the back room and opens a drawer and pulls out a stack of old envelopes, yellowed, labeled in pencil. He says he keeps them because he's sentimental, because he never throws anything away, because his wife hates it. The detectives stare at him like he's holding treasure in trash. They flip through names. Dates. Little order numbers. And there it is, an entry with the family's name, dated months before the murders. A film drop-off. A set of prints. Standard. Innocent. Except the receipt has a note, customer requested negatives returned separately. Most people don't care about negatives. Most people forget them in a drawer. A person who requests them separately is a person who thinks about possession. They ask who picked up the order. The owner shrugs. Her, he says, meaning the mother. Then he pauses, brow furrowing, as if a memory is scraping at the underside of his mind. Maybe not, he says slowly. There was a guy. Picked up for her once. Said he was doing her a favor. Brown coat, I think. Scar on the knuckle. The detectives feel the room tilt again, because the clerk at the station said the book guy had a scar on a knuckle. Coincidence is a word that starts sounding childish after enough bodies. The owner says the guy was polite, asked questions. Asked if any of the photos had come out clear. Asked about the negatives. Paid cash. Left quickly. The owner didn't think it was strange at the time. People do favors. People pick things up for friends. But now, in the shadow of a developed negative mailed as a taunt, favor turns into access, and access turns into how. They ask if he remembers the man's name. The owner shakes his head. But he does remember something else, the man's car. Not the make, not the model, just one detail, the license plate started with a letter combination from a neighboring county. He remembers because he used to live in that county, and the plate made him think of home. The detectives write it down like it's scripture, even though it's incomplete, even though it's fragile, even though it might be wrong. It's still a thread, and threads are what they live on. They go back to the station and pull DMV records the old way, by hand, by phone, by paperwork that takes hours to move from one desk to another. They narrow down plate possibilities until the list becomes manageable, then they start knocking on doors and checking registrations, chasing paper shadows across frozen roads. Most lead nowhere. Some lead to men who never heard of the family. Some lead to cars long sold, long scrapped, long forgotten. But one plate, one partial match, ties to a man who suddenly doesn't feel forgettable at all. He's a delivery driver. Not for something glamorous. For appliances and repairs. The kind of guy who enters houses often, who gets offered coffee, who gets let in without suspicion because he's wearing a uniform and carrying a clipboard. He lives alone in a small rental. No wife to confirm his nights. No kids to soften his image. His record is clean on paper, but paper is blind to what people don't report. When detectives show up, he answers the door in a white undershirt, hair damp like he was just in the shower. He looks surprised, then immediately too calm, like he's practiced being calm. The detectives introduce themselves. They mention the family. They watch his eyes. He blinks once, slow. Terrible, he says. I remember hearing about that. The detective asks if he knew them. He says no. The detective asks if he ever visited the house. He says no. The detective asks if he ever picked up film from a photo shop for the mother. He laughs, just once, and the laugh is wrong because it's empty. Why would I do that? He asks. The detectives ask to come in. He hesitates, then steps aside, because again, refusal would smell like guilt. Inside, the apartment is clean in a way that feels intentional. No clutter. No personality. No photographs on the wall. Not even a calendar. It looks like a place designed to be left quickly. A detective's gaze catches on a showbox in a closet, ordinary, but so was the showbox at the family's house. He asks permission to look. The man says no. The temperature in the room drops like a blade. They leave and apply for a warrant, and this time they have more, the shop owner's memory, the matching scar detail, the partial plate link, the man's refusal. Still thin, still arguable, but enough for a judge who is tired of reading headlines about his county like it's a slaughterhouse. The warrant is granted, and they execute it at dawn, because dawn is when people are least prepared to lie. They search with clinical aggression. They pull out drawers. They dump boxes. They flip mattresses. They open the freezer. They find nothing at first but the ordinary dirt of a man's life, receipts, tools, a few magazines. Then they find film canisters. Old ones. The kind people keep in junk drawers. The detective's hands go steady as he bags them, because in 1978 film is memory in physical form, and physical memory can be stolen, hidden, mailed like a weapon. They find a cheap camera, too. Not fancy. Not professional. But capable. And in a showbox, because it's always a showbox, they find a stack of negatives wrapped in paper, stored like they matter. The detective lifts them carefully, and his pulse kicks when he sees one strip marked with a tiny ink dot, like someone wanted to identify it quickly in the dark. They take everything to the lab. They develop the negatives. The process is slow, chemical, the air thick with that sharp smell that makes eyes water. Frames emerge one by one, ordinary things at first. A street. A dog. a porch. Then a corner of a living room. A wall with a framed family portrait. The same angle. The same flash. The same moment. The detectives stand in silence as the image blooms into reality, because now they aren't chasing fog. Now they're holding proof that this man, this delivery driver, was inside that house at some point. Proof that he captured it. Proof that he kept it. Proof that he valued the scene like a souvenir. The prosecutor's eyes sharpen when he sees the print. Now, he says, now we can talk. They bring the man in again, and this time he doesn't get to smile his way through it. The photograph sits on the table between them, developed fresh, the evidence tag clipped to the corner like a bite mark. The detective asks, "Explain this." The man stares at it, and for a second the mask slips. Not much. Just enough to show something underneath, fear or anger or a cold calculation turning gears. He says he never took that picture. He says it must have been planted. The detective leans forward. How did it get in your closet? The man says he doesn't know. The detective asks about the film shop. The man says he's never been there. The detective asks about the scar. The man looks down, just for a moment, at his hand. The scar is faint, old. It sits there like a punctuation mark on a sentence he can't finish. They push harder. They talk about opportunity. They talk about access. They talk about the family's locks, about how deliverymen often see which doors stick, which windows latch weak, which routines repeat. They talk about the lack of forced entry. The man's breathing changes. The detective notices it, the subtle shift that says his body is reacting even when his mouth refuses. The prosecutor warns him about charges, obstruction, possession of stolen property, potential involvement. The man's jaw tightens. He says, "You can't prove I killed anyone." And that's true. Not yet. But then the detective slides something else across the table, a paper envelope with the newspaper letter inside. Not the original copy, photographed, but close enough to make the man's eyes flicker. "Did you write this?" the detective asks. The man laughs again, that wrong empty laugh. "Anyone can write block letters," he says. The detective says, "Then why did you keep the negative?" And for the first time, the man's calm fractures into anger. "I didn't keep it," he snaps. "I found it." The room freezes. The prosecutor leans in. "Found it where?" he asks. The man realizes what he's done. His mouth shuts. His eyes harden. He sits back and says, "Lawyer." The interview stops, but the damage is done. Found it. Not, never saw it. Not, planted. Found it. That's a crack big enough to slip a crowbar into. They keep him overnight on smaller charges while they scramble to turn the new evidence into a bridge toward the murders themselves. They compare the negative to the mailed negative. They match edge markings, tiny scratches, chemical patterns. The lab says the mailed negative and the one found in his closet share characteristics consistent with being from the same strip or processed together, but again, consistent isn't ironclad. Still, it tightens the circle. It makes him less like a random man and more like a hand reaching into the crime. The town hears about the arrest by evening. People gather outside the station. Cameras flash. Someone yells, "Is he the killer?" The sheriff refuses to answer. He says the investigation is ongoing. He says the community should remain calm. But calm is gone. Calm left the day the door was breached. Now the town's emotions run like electricity, hope surging, fear spiking, rage flaring at anyone who looks like they might slip away. In his cell, the man sits on a cot and stares at the wall. He doesn't look like a monster. He looks like a man who has learned how to be small. Detectives watch him through a slit of glass and feel the same unease they felt with the handyman, because ordinary men commit extraordinary violence all the time, and the world keeps pretending they don't. They wait for him to break. They wait for the confession that will explain the silence, the control, the lack of screams. They wait for a name, a motive, a weapon, a missing item, anything that can close the open mouth of this case. But night passes, and he doesn't break. He eats. He sleeps. He asks for a lawyer again in the morning with a voice that is steady. The prosecutor begins building charges for what they can prove: trespass, theft, harassment by mail if they can link it. The detectives hate that word, if. The case has lived on that word long enough to choke. And somewhere in that same morning, as the town wakes with a strange, shaking optimism, as if the nightmare might finally have an ending, another phone rings, this time in the home of a patrol officer, and a voice on the other end says softly, almost kindly, "You're looking at the wrong man," and then the line goes dead, leaving behind nothing but a dial tone that sounds like laughter if you listen long enough. The dial tone hangs in the patrol officer's kitchen like a phantom, a thin electronic whine that makes his coffee taste like metal, because a voice that calm, that sure, doesn't call to help, it calls to steer, and steering is what killers do best. They turn your headlights away from their own road and let you chase exhaust in the dark. The officer reports it immediately, and within an hour the station is vibrating again, not with progress, but with suspicion reborn, suspicion sharpened, because now the case has two enemies: the person who slaughtered a family, and the person, or the same person, who keeps touching the investigation with gloved fingers, nudging it off course, feeding it just enough to keep the town awake. The sheriff gathers his people in the command post, and the room is thick with stale air and anger. He slams a palm onto the map board hard enough to rattle the pushpins. "We are not getting played," he says, and every detective in the room knows that's exactly what's happening. They start where all steering begins, the call. They trace it like they traced the other one, but the phone company tells them what they already fear: payphone, brief duration, routed through a line that's been used 1,000 times by strangers buying cigarettes and beer. The patrol officer says the voice sounded adult, controlled, maybe mid-30s to mid-40s, not drunk, not trembling. No accent. No speech pattern that jumps out. That's the worst kind. The kind that can belong to anyone. The kind that can sit beside you at a diner and blend into the steam rising off eggs. The detectives mark the payphone location on the board anyway, a red dot near the interstate, and then they stare at it as if staring long enough will make it confess. At the same time, the delivery driver sits in a county cell, lawyered up, silent, and the town begins to do what towns do when they smell an ending: it starts writing it ahead of time. People talk like conviction is inevitable. Like the killer is already boxed, already labeled. Some call the delivery driver a predator. Others call him a scapegoat. A few, the loudest, call him proof that evil is always a stranger and never a neighbor, because that story is easier to swallow than the idea that evil can wear your own county's license plate. The newspaper runs a headline that makes detectives want to punch a wall: photo evidence links suspect to slaying home. Links. Not proofs. Links is a word that sells papers and ruins cases. The prosecutor warns the sheriff in private: if you charge too early, you lose. If you charge too late, the public turns on you. And hovering over everything is the uglier possibility: if the call is real, if wrong man is true, then they are about to waste the community's last reserves of trust on someone who didn't do it, and the real killer will walk through that door again and laugh. The sheriff nods grimly, because the job isn't just catching a murderer anymore, it's keeping the town from tearing itself apart while trying. So the detectives widen the net again, but wider isn't always better. Wider can mean emptier. Wider can mean you drown in it. They go back to the delivery driver's apartment and rewalk the search in their minds. The negatives. The camera. The tidy rooms. The refusal to let them open a showbox. Those are red flags. But red flags aren't handcuffs. They interrogate his routine, his route logs, his delivery records. Deliverymen leave paper trails, signatures, invoices, dispatch calls. In 1978 it's all ink and carbon copies, but carbon copies can still sing if you listen. They subpoena the company records and spend nights in a fluorescent room flipping pages until their fingertips are black with smudged ink. They find that the delivery driver was scheduled in the family's neighborhood 3 weeks before the murders for a refrigerator installation on a street 1 block away. That places him close. Not inside. Close. A reporter hears this and spins it into, he stalked them. The detective who found it wants to throw the reporter's typewriter into the river. They track down the customer from that installation. An older man, nervous, who says yes, the delivery driver came, yes, he was polite, yes, he used the phone once, yes, he asked where the bathroom was. The detective asks if he wandered. The man hesitates. He stood in my hallway for a second, he says. Like he was listening. The detective's stomach tightens because listening is what predators do, too, listening for routine, for absence, for the moment a door will open without a fight. Then they ask the question that makes people flinch, did you ever give him coffee, let him in deeper, talk about your neighbors, mention who lives where? The man says he might have said something about the nice family down the street. He doesn't remember the name. But he remembers the driver's eyes when he said it, attentive, focused, like he'd just been handed a map. It's still not enough. It's still just a shape. So they turn the photograph into an aggressive weapon. They show it to people who knew the family. They ask if anyone remembers a man taking pictures inside the house. Most say no. One neighbor says the family didn't like strangers with cameras. Another says the father once complained about a man being nosy during a repair visit months earlier. They ask who the repairman was. The neighbor shrugs. Some guy, she says. Brown coat. Brown coat again, like the case is obsessed with the color of anonymity. In the evidence room, the detective takes out the defaced family photo from the first envelope and places it beside the newly developed print from the delivery driver's negatives. He studies the edges, the handling marks, the way the photo was creased. He doesn't have fancy forensic tools for emotional truth, but he has instinct sharpened by months of staring at horror. He notices something that should be minor. The defacement lines on the first photo are too precise, too evenly pressured, like someone used a tool, maybe a small blade, maybe the corner of a key, rather than a random pen. Keys. The jar of keys in the handyman's place flashes through his mind like a warning. The detective's thoughts swing back to the handyman, because the handyman never left the case. He's been hovering at the edge like a stain that doesn't wash out. The keys, the stolen photos, the ex-wife's testimony about souvenirs, marbles like coins. And now this delivery driver, another man with access, another man with a camera, another man with a brown coat in someone's memory. Are they connected? Are they the same circle? Or are they separate predators feeding off the same tragedy? The sheriff authorizes a quiet surveillance on both men, because quiet is the only way to catch someone who thrives on being loud through the mail. Deputies in unmarked cars park down the street. They rotate shifts. They watch porches. They watch trash bins. They watch who comes and goes. The town doesn't know, but it feels watched anyway, because in a small community, secrecy has a smell, and people can taste it on the wind. 2 nights into surveillance, a deputy reports something that makes everyone sit up. The handyman's place had a visitor after midnight. A car pulled up. The visitor stayed 5 minutes. No lights. No handshake in view. Just a silhouette at the door, then gone. They run the plate. It belongs to the delivery driver's employer. The detectives stare at each other like they've been punched. Connection doesn't equal conspiracy, and conspiracy doesn't equal murder, but it's a thread, and it's thicker than the others. They pull employment records. The handyman isn't on payroll, but he did subcontract work for the delivery company occasionally, small repairs, door adjustments, installation prep. It's a perfect overlap. One man gets inside houses by carrying appliances, another gets inside by fixing what those appliances break. Together, they can enter a home without raising alarm. Together, they can gather routines, keys, layouts. Together, they can turn a neighborhood into a catalog. The prosecutor hears the theory and says the word that chills the room: team. A team changes everything. A team explains the silence, one controls the victims, one moves through the house. A team explains the lack of screams, one intimidates, one restrains. A team explains the letters, one enjoys contact, one enjoys control. A team also makes the case harder, because now you're not hunting one ghost. You're hunting a pair, and they can alibi each other in ways a lone killer can't. They bring the handyman in on a probation violation, something minor, technical, but enough to put him under pressure. They question him hard about the midnight visitor. He denies. They mention the company car. He shrugs and says people come by for work. He says he's being harassed. He says he's tired of cops acting like they own his life. He says, "You want a killer? Go catch one." He's good at being insulted. It's a performance. They bring the delivery driver in as well, but his lawyer blocks everything. The prosecutor is forced to pick carefully, push too hard, and the defense will scream harassment and poison a jury pool already buzzing with rumor. Push too softly, and the suspects breathe free air, and the killer, who might be one of them, keeps smiling. The sheriff's office is trapped between law and fear doesn't respect procedure. So they look for something that can't be argued away, physical evidence tying a suspect to the act itself. Not presence, not curiosity, not stolen photos, blood, hair, fibers, fingerprints. They reopen the family's evidence with a meticulousness that borders on obsession. They re-examine the cigarette butt found outside, the partial boot print, the smudged fingerprints. They compare the boot print to the handyman's work boots. The size is close. Close again. They compare the cigarette brand to what the delivery driver smokes. He claims he doesn't smoke. His ashtray says otherwise. But a cigarette butt on a lawn is still a cigarette butt on a lawn. It's not a murder weapon. It's not a confession. Then a lab tech, overworked, underpaid, but stubborn, calls the lead detective in. She's been running tests on the envelope seals, not expecting much, but she found a faint pattern in the adhesive, a chemical marker used in certain brands of tape and glue. In 1978, packaging varies. Certain industrial supply stores carry certain brands. She can't identify the buyer, but she can narrow the distribution area, a handful of suppliers in 2 counties. It's thin. It's better than nothing. The detectives hit those suppliers like a storm. They show up with badges and urgency. They ask about bulk purchases of adhesive and glossy photo film. Most clerks shrug. Receipts are gone. But one store owner, older, with a memory sharpened by years of watching men try to shop anonymously, says he remembers a customer who bought photo-related supplies and insisted on paying cash. Brown coat, he says. Scar on the knuckle, maybe. The detective's jaw tightens so hard it hurts. The store owner says the man asked a strange question at checkout, "Does this leave prints?" The store owner laughed at the time. He isn't laughing now. They ask the owner if he remembers the man's face. He says, not clearly. But he remembers the smell, aftershave, sharp, old-fashioned. The same detail, repeated. It's becoming a chorus. And choruses don't appear by accident. The detective goes back to the station and pulls personnel files, not just on suspects, but on anyone connected to the case's perimeter, evidence clerks, deputies, mailroom staff, anyone who could have leaked details about no screams, or had access to photos and negatives. He hates himself for doing it. It feels like turning a knife into the department's own ribs. But the case has already turned everything inward. He scans the files for something ridiculous, brown coats, scars, aftershave. He tells himself he's losing his mind. Then he sees a note in an old file, a former deputy, resigned 2 years ago after a disciplinary incident. The note mentions a habit of excessive grooming and strong cologne complaints from co-workers. The detective looks up, slow, as if the room just shifted. He pulls the file closer. The former deputy's name is familiar, not because he was a suspect, but because he was around, back when the murders happened. He worked patrol. He knew the neighborhood. He knew routines. He knew how investigations work. He would know exactly what details to taunt with. The detective's pulse accelerates. He checks the file photograph. The face is older now in his mind, but the eyes are the same kind of flat attentive. He flips the page. Under identifying marks, it says, small scar on right-hand knuckle. The station's air seems to thicken instantly, as if everyone in the building can feel the shift even without being told. The lead detective doesn't announce it to the room. He doesn't want panic before proof. He takes the file and walks to the sheriff's office, closes the door behind him, and places it on the desk like a bomb. The sheriff reads in silence. His face hardens. He asks one question, quietly, where is he now? They track the former deputy through old addresses and new paperwork. He moved counties. He took a job that keeps him near roads and strangers. A job that could put him near a payphone outside an interstate bar. A job that could let him travel without raising suspicion. They call his current employer and confirm he clocked out late the night the second envelope arrived at the newspaper. The employer says he left alone. No one saw where he went. The sheriff orders a discreet pickup. No sirens. No spectacle. They can't afford to spook a man who might be a killer and might also be nothing more than coincidence wearing a scar. Deputies drive out, hearts pounding, and when they arrive at his address, a small rental with a porch in shade, the kind of place that could belong to anyone, they sit for a moment, engine idling, because the case is balancing on a knife edge. One wrong move and the whole town will either erupt or collapse. They knock. The door opens. The former deputy stands there in a brown coat. His eyes move over the badges, the hands, the posture. He doesn't look surprised. He looks prepared. Like he's been expecting this scene, like he's watched it in his head 100 times and rehearsed where to place his expression. One detective says his name. Another says they need him to come downtown to answer questions. The former deputy smiles faintly, polite, practiced. About what? He asks, voice calm, almost gentle. And in that calm is the most terrifying possibility of all, that the voice on the phone, the one that said, wrong man, wasn't warning them away from an innocent suspect at all, but guiding them toward the right one, because some killers don't just want to escape, some killers want the chase to feel like a game they control, right up until the moment the handcuffs close, if they close at all.